he's hit a level of consistency now that we expect. So it's not as surprising when he scores or has a great game. It's just the norm. But I still believe he deserves recognition. To a mold of Salah, when you just expect him to score and do well, and you're kind of taking it for granted, but you got to remember, like, this is high level stuff they're producing, very, very, very consistent week in, week out. So yes, Saka definitely stood out, not necessarily just for the performance, but for the level he set himself.
How important is it that the likes of Saka and Odegaard step up in these kind of games where, you know, a home game in against a mid-table side, it can be ones that you've just got to grind out at times. You look into your big players then, aren't you, for something special?
So I think they always, the players, like I said, it's a level of consistency they've hit. So they tend to produce the goods and what's necessary and what's needed in these games against this kind of opposition. It's the so-called bigger games, the Cities, the Chelseas, the Liverpool games. It's kind of like, well, these are the ones that can really define your season. So who's going to step up then? And yeah, Odegaard, equally as effective, could have easily got our kind of player of the match. But yeah, I just think there's a belief with Arsenal now of the teams that, I think there's a general belief in all the teams they play, but the teams they're supposed to beat now, and I think that's been labelled of them in the past, they beat them now. And like you said, it may be a more convincing than the scoreline suggests, but they get it done.
Saturday evening, Newcastle getting a very comfortable victory. One young man who's making a cracking impression is Tino Livramento since he's come into the side.
Lucky enough to work with Tino with England and seeing what he's capable of. And like you said, he's unfortunate at Southampton with an injury, because I'm sure you would have seen these performances. But yeah, he's bided his time and he's got into the team. And as I said, he's not always played in his favourite position. He's operated as a left back as well, which that's probably the bit that surprised me, because as a right back, he's so effective. But now to see him do it in the left back area, he's even more impressive. And yeah, suffered a pretty bad injury. So to show the dedication and the desire, what it takes to come back and hit this level, and not only in the Premier League, in the Champions League as well. And like, that was probably the most secure aspect of Newcastle's team last year, is their defence. They had minimal injuries and they kind of picked himself. And now they've made changes to it, Lascelles and Tino, and it's kind of like just continuously being effective. So a lot of credit to him, and also obviously how they play and Eddie Howe.
With an England hat on as well, obviously you say he played under you guys at the under 21 level. Fullback is traditionally in recent years a position where England have been very well stocked for quality. But do you think, from what you've seen of Tino going forward, he has the quality to break into that England setup?
That's always a difficult one. Listen, there's a lot of players that could play for England. A lot of them in the 21 squad that we had at that time that could play. Whether they will in the timing of what it takes, I don't know, because then someone has to come out, and then you've got to look at, as good as Tino is, and he is really good, are Trent, Kyle, Trips, Reece playing bad enough to not be selected? And also you have to consider that. Listen, I don't think there's any question, any doubt Tino can play for England and will play well. And Rico Lucy's there now as well, so there's a lot of players that can play. It's whether who's not playing well, and none of them seem to be not playing well. You'd probably say Reece due to injury, but when he's playing, we just seen him. He's probably the first defender to keep Doku quiet. So in terms of performances, none of them are playing bad enough to not be selected.
On to Sunday then. Big wins for Chelsea and Liverpool. We'll start with Chelsea. Enzo Fernandez scoring twice. I mean, he wasn't signed for his goals, but he is a player that can really take a game by the scruff of the neck, isn't he, Fernandez?
He showed me definitely more strings to his bow this season. Like the performance I've seen, like you said then, I assumed he was just going to be more defensive. But no, he's got a lot of quality. And again, Ashley Cole spoke very highly of him. In terms of his technique and his capabilities to fight for the pitch, and now obviously that they're benefiting from that. And not only that, it was a close game, and they had 10 men, and he seems like a leader. Again, I'm aware that Conor Gallagher is the captain at this moment in time, and but he seems like someone that can lead a team. Not necessarily by just voice, by performance. And that is equally as important from a player's perspective. They need to look at their leader, their captain, be like, he's as consistent as anyone else. And when it's on the line, he puts himself first and obviously makes massive contributions. And that's what he's done.
They paid over £100 million for him, and a lot of people were questioning whether they'd overpaid for him. But, it's easy to forget he's only 22 years old for a midfielder and the quality he possesses. Is it fair to say that is already looking like a good piece of business by Chelsea in the long term now?
Again, it's similar to Declan Rice. I think question marks only get asked about fees when people believe they aren't performing. And Chelsea on a whole are probably short of where they believe they were going to be. Overall, but they're getting there, they're building there. It's not a case of quality with Chelsea or Enzo, it's just a consistency. And like I said, there's a lot of factors to consider for him. Like, again, granted, Declan, similar fees, similar positions, but the transition was probably a little bit easier due to moving across London and not across Europe, the language barrier, the culture change. So there's a lot of factors that you have to consider when players are moving. But listen, this season, he's arguably as consistent as anyone else in that Chelsea team.
And we said recently in another column about Liverpool and how they were maybe just creeping under the radar. And another win, a really big win, especially having to come from behind. Suppose they've had the issue with Alisson being out for a couple of weeks, and that's going to rock the back line a little bit. It ended up being a 7-goal thriller against Fulham, but they found a way to win. All the goals were unbelievable technique, but particularly Trent. I mean, we see it time and time again from him, Donny, for all of the question marks over him defensively. What he brings to Liverpool as an attacking unit is first class, isn't it?
Oh, without doubt. And like you said, there is question marks defensively, but he's in the team to affect the game. And he's now the manager's selecting him and instructing him to affect the game in a very offensive way. We've seen him contribute assists, but now he's contributing goals, and the manager's putting him in areas where he can score. And he definitely has the quality to finish. So listen, like, Trent is an exceptional footballer, and that's the way we have to look at it. We can't necessarily pigeonhole him to a right back and gauge him off other right backs, because if we compare it to other right backs, you'd say, okay, they're not as offensive as Trent. They're not as effective in the offensive areas. So why aren't they being hindered? And like I said, it's not every defender's job isn't just being there just to defend. Like, Trent is in there to contribute and cause effects going forward. And he's done that. And the more he does that, the more teams will have to adapt to his qualities. And when they do that, that's equally as being as good defender. The fact that then we can't play on that winger now because Trent's not going to play in the fullback area. We have to combat that with an extra midfielder, and that all of a sudden that affects teams. So listen, as long as he's having an impact on Liverpool effectively, then listen, no one can really complain of his contribution.
Quite often with Trent, we see him in his celebrations. He sometimes, likes to shush the crowd. Some likes to give it a bit with the hands to the ears as well. There is a lot of noise surrounding him. Do you think that it affects him at all? Do you think he listens to that? Because it must be tough to block it out. He seems to be constantly in the discussion, doesn't he?
Yeah, listen, I don't know him personally like that, but there'll be elements of it that he's aware of and frustrated by, and that is a way of him voicing his frustration. Then great. We want that. As long as neither get carried away, the fans don't, and the media, myself, don't get carried away in terms of the criticism and kind of critiquing every aspect of his game. And he doesn't get carried away in celebrations. I think it's entertaining. Like, it's talking about in a positive way. And he said, as long as it's goal celebrations, like, everyone's happy.
Yeah, definitely. And we brought down the weekend with a brilliant game. I know you were there for this Man City 3. Tottenham 3. Tottenham just seems to have a way of getting the points off City, but is some way or form. But City, the dominant force, I think. But Tottenham, they have this great threat on the counter attack, particularly under Ange Postecoglou. And we saw what an impact Kulusevski made last year, and it's maybe taken him a little bit longer to get going this year, but he's been fantastic recently, and he really, really had a strong impact on the game, didn't he? Decisive impact.
Oh yeah. Again, could have easily been Son. The player of the match, but Kulusevski, I think the kind of less glamorous work from a footballer's perspective, I've seen and I recognise his contribution. Played in multiple positions throughout the game and was effective, was brave in possession, was responsible out of possession. So, yeah, his goal, when looking at it yesterday, there's not much wrong from a City perspective. Yes, you could critique it to it always. There's always something you could do better in hindsight, but he made that ball his own. He was determined to get on the end of that, and his timing and his impact on it. And as I said, they fully deserved that point. They was outstanding throughout the game and changed it up, and obviously made some errors, but yeah, overall Spurs and Kulusevski were exceptional and fully deserved their point.
And Kulusevski spoke after the game saying that how proud he was of his teammates and the way that they're digging in now. I mean, we've spoken before about how much they seem to be enjoying playing under Ange Postecoglou, but have you been surprised by how well they've dealt with the injuries? Because they've lost some big players, haven't they?
Yeah, I have, but not maybe not for the reasons that just because of the lack of quality. I definitely believe they have the quality to cope, but again, it's a totally different style that we're seeing them adapt. So, granted, the starting 11 was kind of selecting itself at the start of the season, and that was new for them. But now you're asking even more players to come in and just buy into it and execute. And it's not, like I said, it's not pre-season. This is when it matters. It's in the season, and so yeah, the Celso, Davis, they've all been exceptional, especially Davis. Even the Wolves game, I thought he was really good. And yesterday again, they played 4 fullbacks and kept Haaland relatively quiet. He missed a chance in the first half, but other than that, he was kind of kept really quiet. They frustrated him and didn't let him have much impact on the game. I know he got the assist, but that come from a mistake from someone else. But really impressed with how their squad is shaping up to be, and when everyone's fit, it will just give them all belief, because now there won't be question marks on if there is injuries, what happens. Everyone will know, okay, and it will give the manager confidence now to rotate a little bit more, which also then allows the squad to be closer, because everyone believes they have a chance to play. Where I think before it was like, this is my team and I'm going to pick them, but just be ready.
Yeah,